in store for later today. Let's talk to Tanya Young Williams. You may remember her from Basketball Wives, that particular show, but she's also a celebrity lawyer, and she's been following this case, blogging about it for Huffington Post.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning. That first week for Dr. Murray didn't go so well. I mean, a lot of testimony about how he didn't tell anyone that there was propofol, how he bungled the CPR, these sorts of things, collecting up vials. What do you think the impact was from all that?
I think it was a very dramatic week, and I think the impact was significant. The prosecution laid out motive, which we know is not necessary for an involuntary manslaughter case, but they laid out motive because jurors want to know why. Then they also wanted to begin to show a cover-up, which is also amazing because they have not charged him with obstruction of justice. So the prosecution is actually laying down extra information so the jurors can go back to that jury room and say, we know why he did it. There was also a cover-up, and that may mean guilt.
You were in the court. What did you notice about these jurors?
Well, you know, I noticed that the jurors are taking their task very seriously. They're listening to the evidence. I don't see them looking at the family very much, but I've also sat in other high-profile cases, and I realize that it's usually between week 2 and 3 where the jurors begin to relax, and they're not so attentive. They're watching their environment, and that's when the lawyers can really tap in to see what jurors they have maybe or what jurors they have to work on.
Some people are saying now that week 1 was so damaging to Dr. Murray that perhaps the only way Dr. Murray can rehabilitate himself is by testifying himself. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, it was damaging, to say the least, and it's going to be an uphill battle for the defense. I don't think, as an attorney, it would be a good move for him to take the stand. I mean, he opens himself up to so much questioning about his history, about his practice, and he has to answer questions about the omission of services that the prosecution said he did not attend to Michael Jackson.
Well, that'd be a very fascinating deal if he does actually testify. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Thanks so much for talking to us. And again, Tanya Young, she's also a blogger for the Huffington Post. And Tanya, want to ask you right off the bat, my understanding is UCLA Medical Center Dr. Rochelle Cooper is on the witness stand being interviewed by J. Michael Flanagan. Of course, that is one of the defense attorneys. Is it their job, the defense attorney's job, to turn her testimony in the favor of the defense? She was a prosecutorial witness earlier.
Well, it's their job, and they are attempting to actually chip away at some of the inconsistencies that they see in her testimony. And what he's also doing today is passively laying out a timeline for the defense's contention as to when Dr. Conrad Murray might have given Michael Jackson propofol. So they're using her testimony to get in some of their key points, and at the same time trying to slightly discredit her understanding of what took place in her emergency room.
Is the defense's argument, at least that you've picked up on so far, is that if there was an overdose of propofol, or that there was, it was Michael's fault? But is that a good defense? Should the propofol even have been in his care or anywhere near him to begin with?
Well, we understand that's going to be their defense based on the opening statements. However, they have not gotten to that point with Dr. Rochelle Cooper. However, they are shifting some of the attention away from propofol onto another drug, Lazepam, which they're saying was in which was in Michael Jackson's system. So they're actually talking about a couple of drugs here and figuring out what Dr. Cooper knew about the drugs in Michael Jackson's system.
Okay, both sides have had an entire weekend to kind of regroup, if you will. What do you expect to hear now that we're beginning week 2?
Well, I am expecting for the prosecution to continue to hammer down their timeline after Michael Jackson was declared dead. But I also expect them now to start focusing on what was Dr. Murray doing in the time that he was away from Michael Jackson. What was he doing and how long was he doing it? They're going to really try to establish what time they think Michael Jackson went into cardiac arrest. I think the defense is going to continue to just try to stay off the slaughter and build up inconsistency in the testimony until they get their chance to put forth their arguments.
And I know it's still early in this trial, but if you're keeping score, who's winning?
Oh my goodness, unfortunately it's not really close right now. The prosecution is winning by a lot, but once again, this is how it works. The prosecution has a chance, and soon the defense will get a chance, and hopefully they think they're going to level the playing field and then give it to the jurors to make a really good decision.
All right, Tanya Young, we want to thank you for joining us live from the Criminal Courts building. We'll check in with you a little bit later. Thank you. Well, protest.
Jackson's personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, some interesting testimony, certainly from some of the women Murray was apparently involved with.
Joining us now to talk more about it is attorney Tanya Young Williams. Good morning, Tanya. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
On the stand right now, I believe we have a live picture of what's going on inside the courtroom. Medical supply company representative on the stand. They're pouring through Murray's shipment records. What do you think the significance will be with this information they could
Well, the prosecution is actually just trying to cover every base. They want to show that Dr. Murray was directly responsible for getting and ordering everything that's come into Michael Jackson's room, from the equipment that's there, and as you heard in the testimony yesterday, to the propofol. So this right here is really a systematic way of showing Dr. Murray was directly responsible for everything that came into that room.
Now, yesterday, if you saw some sound bites and clips from that, we saw some of the women that Conrad Murray was reportedly involved with through the years. Yes. Now, while this is not a trial of Dr. Murray's personal life, the prosecution is clearly trying to establish something. What is that?
Well, because the judge did rule a lot of their testimony that was heard in preliminary would not come in, you don't hear in this trial that he did in fact have a personal relationship with 3 of these women, and in fact 3 of them thought they were his girlfriend at the same time. So what they actually are also showing is because Dr. Murray was speaking to them within a window of time in which he should have been caring for his patient, that is reckless. So they're saying, guess what? He was handling personal business, he was handling office business, and trying to take care of a high-profile client. You can't do all of them really well at the same time.
And is there sort of a moral inference of some sort? It's like,
well, you know what? One thing is you're in L.A., so the jurors there are used to hearing about the old man in the club. So they're not sort of put off by the fact that this man, you know, had a girlfriend who was younger. They might have a problem that he had 3, but that's going to depend on who the juror is, what they believe, and what their background is.
What do you think? What do you think? And I'm just wondering because defense hasn't had their chance yet. This is the prosecution's. But I'm looking at TV, analysts, lawyers, everybody's coming on and they're saying the defense isn't that strong. What do you think happens when Conrad Murray goes home, turns on the TV, and night after night hears that? What do you think those conversations are between Conrad Murray and his team?
What are we going to do next? You know, Conrad Murray, and like I said, I've been intimately involved with high-profile cases, and Conrad Murray really wants his turn. He's sitting there saying, when are we going to shine? When are we going to shine? And the defense is trying to tell him, listen, we'll have our chance. The prosecution is doing what they're supposed to do. They present their evidence, and if you're doing a good job at the end of the prosecution's case, you should feel that the guy is guilty. But the defense gets a chance to come on up and says, we're going to poke holes in this. We're going to plant seeds of doubt and hopefully give it to the jury and let them see, have they proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Another woman that testified yesterday was Sade Anding. She was on the phone with Conrad Murray during that time, what we believe to be that time, where he left the phone, maybe put it in his pocket, she might have said. Anything to that conversation?
She's key. She's very, very key. She's important for a couple of reasons. One, she continues to establish a timeline that the prosecution has logically and methodically laid out. Her timeline establishes at this moment, Conrad Murray at least knew Michael Jackson was in trouble, if not dead. But her testimony also directly contradicts what Conrad Murray told to the police, that he had gone to the bathroom. So she's really powerful in a couple of ways. And she was believable, and she was likable.
Okay, on the lighter side, a lot has been made of the one mistress, Nicole Alvarez. As much as it might have been a little comic relief to some people, how much of a distraction is somebody like this to either side, to the case?
Well, the thing is, she came up as a prosecution's witness. And she really, I think, did more damage to her boyfriend, Conrad Murray, because she was not likable, she was not believable. The jurors could tell she was withholding information.
Almost seemed like she was auditioning.
Well, you know what? Well, she looked the part of an actress, but her performance wasn't stellar, so she should not use that as her real thing, you know. But like I said, she didn't help the defense at all, even though she is his still mistress and the mother of his 2-year-old child. And I don't think that the jurors really appreciated the way she the way she testified yesterday.
We got to say thank you. This has been really interesting to get your perspective. We know that you've seen a lot of high-profile cases. This is attorney Tanya Young Williams. You've been a real resource to us here at KTLA. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Safe travels in that rain out there.
Thank you very much.
Get some perspective now on the testimony yesterday and basically take a look at what's going to happen today. Legal expert Tanya Young Williams joins us now from the 12th floor of the Criminal Courts Building, the CCB, in downtown Los Angeles. First, Tanya, good morning. How powerful were those audio recordings that the jury heard yesterday?
Good morning. The audio recordings were very dramatic and, in fact, sad. And you have to remember that 6 of the jurors said that they are fans of Michael Jackson. So those audios were going to make an impact on them. But, in fact, they made an impact on everyone who listened. You have 2 schools of thought, of course, in a trial. The defense is contending that, guess what, this is how Dr. Conrad Murray found Michael Jackson. But the prosecution is saying you are an enabler. And, in fact, if you knew that Michael Jackson was in this state, why are you ordering more propofol?
And do we know why Conrad Murray, those recordings had to be pulled from his cell phone, meaning like they had been deleted at some point? Do we know why they were deleted? And even if we don't know why, what do you think the jury will make of the fact that they had to be pulled by a criminal expert out of his phone?
Well, you know, I'm here and I speak to a lot of attorneys, but I spend also a lot of time speaking to the lay person, and the jurors are made up of lay people. And they've been asking me, first and foremost, why did he even record them? The fact that they had to retrieve them, yeah, that's secondary. But the lay person, I would suggest, even the jurors are saying, why would a doctor record his patient in this condition? And they're going to have to answer this question. And if Dr. Murray doesn't take the stand, that's going to resonate with the jurors, and that may be a question that's never answered.
All right. Well, a pathologist from the coroner's office who conducted the autopsy on Michael Jackson is expected to take the stand today. We understand another person from that office, an investigator perhaps, on the stand right now. What is that testimony going to be like?
Well, the coroner's testimony is going to give insight to the jurors of what actually takes place in an autopsy and why an autopsy is important, especially in light of this type of trial. But you're also going to see pictures that the prosecutions are going to put into evidence. And the pictures will probably be very graphic and quite gory. Too much, I would assume, for the Jackson family to see. But it's really going to allow the prosecution, once again, to bring Michael Jackson into this courtroom so that the jurors never, ever forget why they are there. Someone has died, and someone has to be held accountable. That's what the prosecution is going to do, and help the coroner's testimony is going to help further their case in that manner.
All right, we want to thank you so much for joining us live, and I know throughout the day you'll be joining us live right here on KTLA 5.2. Tanya, thank you.
Thank you.
6.2, Sam. Day 9 of the Conrad Murray involuntary manslaughter trial has started. Legal expert Tanya Young Williams is monitoring the proceedings from the courthouse. She joins us now live. And Tanya, what's going on that you can make out?
Well, right now we just have a tedious cross-examination of the toxicologist, Dan Anderson. And what's going on here is the defense has a contention that Michael Jackson self-medicated, either orally or in another way. And because there is lorazepam and propofol in the stomach, the defense is trying to suggest that is proof that Michael Jackson took it orally. Dan Anderson is really firm, and he's saying, you know what, a lot of these questions are out of the scope of my expertise, but I am not suggesting that because it's present there, Michael Jackson orally administered propofol or lorazepam.
But could not the prosecution simply argue it shouldn't have been there in the first place, whether or not Michael administered it to himself? Or would that, if they could suggest and the jury believed that he did administer it to himself, it would get Conrad Murray off the hook?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. The prosecution is allowing the defense to do what they do, is cross. But at the end of the day, the jurors are going to say, is it the fact that it's just there in and of itself? Is that gross negligence? So that's going to be at the hands of the jurors. Of course, the prosecution saying this looked like a drugstore, and that in itself leads to the repeated gross negligence for which they think Conrad Murray is guilty.
When it gets to this kind of detailed testimony, what happens to a jury? Do their eyes glaze over? Is there a way to keep them involved and interested?
Well, you know what? I've been involved in a high-profile case, and I've sat and looked in the jurors' eyes for a long time. They actually take a lot of notes here because they take their job very seriously. But if he continues to go down this path, yes, someone will get bored, and someone will say, you know what, I've already gotten your point, let's move on. So the defense attorney will be able to look in the jurors' eyes and see the ones who really want to move on.
Let's talk about yesterday's testimony with the coroner's investigator. The defense attorney's kind of painting her as someone who botched the investigation. Is that the impression that you got, or do you think jurors will understand that it's a tedious process and that every little thing is being scrutinized?
Well, I think he did a good job in showing that there are, in fact, errors made, but there weren't so many for, I think, a juror to come out and said she totally botched the scene. But what I think happened that was very important for the defense yesterday is they were able to sow seeds as to their theory. They were able to get testimony in that supports their theory. One, that the bed and the medication was only 2 feet apart, but secondly, that no one secured the crime scene. So therefore, the more testimony they can get in that supports their theory, the less likely they will have to be to put Dr. Conrad Murray on the stand.
All right, Tanya Young Williams, thank you so much for joining us with your expertise.
Thank you for having me.
The death of Steve